Next on CyberCrime.
I was going for $50 million. That was where I was headed to.
A confession to police from a man who used the internet and his skills to steal $150,000.
Plus, you may want to think twice before doing your personal business online at work. Your boss may be watching, but are there no limits to what your employer may monitor?
CyberCrime is brought to you by Symantec.
Wow, what a busy week here at CyberCrime. I love you. The love bug worm hits tens of millions of systems worldwide, and it's mutating. We have details on who is hit, how the worm works, and how to stay safe. All that in a few minutes, but first, here's Luke with our top story.
Identity theft. It's one of the fastest-growing economic crimes in the country. According to government reports, the Secret Service investigated more than 9,000 identity theft cases in 1997 with losses over $700 million. But identity theft isn't only about someone stealing your personal information. Thanks to the Internet, criminals can also impersonate your company. And as you're about to see, it doesn't take much to wind up a victim.
As you can see, these corporate seals are the actual corporate seals that William Newell purchased so that he could use them as a major part of his fraud scheme.
By all accounts, William Newell is a sophisticated entrepreneur. Police say he even has a degree in business administration.
He's actually taken his business education so that he can put a business plan that would be a very viable plan in action, but it happens to be something that's extremely illegal.
Police say Newell started by creating a fake supply company, a company that supposedly rented computers to other businesses. Then he went to the Internet, searching for information about real companies and their officials. Using the information he found online, he would apply to a leasing company for the money to rent the computers. And the leasing company would send the loan check directly to Newell's fake supplier.
He was able to use a president's name, a vice president's name, the secretary-treasurer's name from each company, as well as the corporate seals that I showed you earlier, so that those companies would appear legitimate. In fact, we had companies tell us that he completed his paperwork so well that there was no doubt in their mind that it was a good thing.
Police say they found leasing companies that had been victimized all across the country. When they finally caught up with William Newell, they didn't find him in a plush suite of offices. Instead, Newell and his partner, Wendell Hazelton, were running their operation out of a mobile home in this trailer park outside Seattle. The police made this videotape as they approached to execute a search warrant.
As a matter of fact, as we walked in, Mr. Newell and Mr. Hazelton were both there at the RV. 2 computers were turned on. They had their aliases on the screen. Everything that a policeman could dream about as far as having all the evidence in front of you when you walk through the door was there for us.
That may be why Newell decided to confess, admitting to police that he was still only at the beginning stages of his scam.
I was going for $50 million. That was where I was headed to. I figured if they're that loose, and I could get a lot better. If I had a little bit more money, I could get better equipment. I could do a hell of a lot better job.
So how much did he get? In his confession, Newell admitted to stealing about $150,000. But the real question is, why did it work? Why were the leasing companies so willing to accept Newell's fake paperwork? Sergeant Brister says that some of the companies did try to check the phone numbers that Newell provided. But as it turns out, that wasn't enough.
The phone number had nothing but a message machine with Mr. Newell using one of his aliases, and soon after the message was left by the leasing company, he would call back and return that.
They didn't care. As long as you're live and it looked good, they sent it in. So that was the thing. Then you needed a way to communicate, which was the telephone and the mailbox.
It didn't take much more than a quick view of the information, as long as it was filled out well, which it was, to say, oh, okay, I see Altera Corporation. I know they're worth millions. And I think we can let them take $50,000. So it was the good name of a good company that Mr. Newell and Mr. Hazelton depended on to go ahead and make this fraud scheme work.
Police say both Newell and Hazleton were convicted on grand theft and money laundering charges. Newell was sentenced to 3 years in California State Prison. Hazleton got a year in the county jail, 3 years probation, and was ordered to pay $125,000 in restitution. If you want to know more about identity theft, there is help on the web. You can find some excellent links at our website at cybercrime.com. While you're there, why not give your computer a much-needed physical? Check out our security scanner. It's at the top right-hand side of the page. The scanner will check your computer for the top 5 viruses like CIH, Melissa, and Explore Zip. You can also check to find out whether your browser blocks adult-related material and reveals your personal information. Coming up on Cybercrime, remember those denial-of-service attacks in February? Well, after the break, we'll bring you the details on a new DOS attack tool making the rounds. This week's Cybercrime News and Review is next.
Topping our Cybercrime News and Review this week, a new email worm wreaks havoc on computer systems worldwide. It's called the Love Bug, and it's making the rounds at a pace even the Melissa virus would find impressive. We begin our team coverage with a look at who's been bitten by the Love Bug.
It's spreading more rapidly than Melissa did. It's really at epidemic proportions. For example, in Europe, 80% of Sweden is affected, 30% of the UK, 70% of German companies are affected by it. We're seeing large-scale infections here in the United States as well.
It sounds like the Melissa virus, but this is a new beast taking over computer systems. It's called the Love Bug, spreading through email systems across the globe.
It comes in as a message with the subject line, I love you, and there's an attachment called Love Letter for You, .txt.
The Love Bug first appeared in the Philippines and followed the rising sun, carving a path across Asia into Europe and finally hitting U.S. systems Thursday morning.
I believe the House and Senate shut down for some time this morning, and I don't have full details on that.
Similar story for our neighbors across the pond. In the UK, the House of Commons shut down its entire email system.
Part of the problem is arising from the sheer volume of emails that this particular email generates. I understand that it triggers a response going out to everybody on a system's address book.
Now, the Love Bug didn't only target government servers. Ford Motor Company, Fox, ABC, and Time Warner are among the few reporting that they've been hit.
Now, the Love Bug continued to take out computers on Friday. By some accounts, tens of millions of systems have been infected, while economic losses worldwide top more than $1 billion. The I Love You bug is not done wreaking havoc on email systems worldwide, and now we know it's mutating. At least half a dozen new variants are circulating, one that comes with an attachment promising a very funny joke, another with a subject heading Mother's Day Order Confirmation. Alex tells us how the Love Bug attacks.
It's a very simple bit of Visual Basic script code. It's about 2 pages long. It's badly written. It's buggy. This is not written by any kind of a genius.
That may be true, but that doesn't change the Love Bug damage. The email reads, I love you, and clicking on the attachment starts a series of disturbing events. First, it copies itself to your Windows directory. For Microsoft Outlook users, it sends itself to everyone in your address book. Even worse, it does it every time you reboot. The worm asks Internet Explorer to download a program to capture Windows passwords, then emails them to an address in the Philippines. The good news is those sites are now offline. It also attempts to spread itself via Internet Relay chat rooms. And worst of all, it attempts to replace and ultimately destroy many files, including those that end in VBS and JPEG, with the virus code itself. According to Patrick Martin at SARC, Symantec's Antivirus Research Center in Santa Monica, California, the way it spreads may be tied to the intended victims.
It seems that it's targeted toward consumers, toward end users who don't have sophisticated systems set up. However, because it also is able to infect files on networks, that also suggests that there's possibilities that it was directed somewhat anyway at corporate environments.
On Thursday, the Pentagon said its first step is to protect.
Our next step will be to use this opportunity as a way to sharpen our defenses against new viruses that might come out in the next months.
For a review of how the love bug works, how to stay safe, updates on new variants, and a new tool to scan for the love bug, go to cybercrime.com. Well, there's more trouble for Napster. Now Metallica is naming names. The heavy metal group gave Napster a list of 335,000 users who allegedly ordered pirated copies of Metallica songs on the net. Following up on its lawsuit against Napster last month, the band is demanding the startup ban all the users it named on that list. Metallica says it doesn't plan to sue each of the Napster users named.
This is not about Metallica and our fans. This is not about greed. This is not about money. This is about as close to anything in the music business as what's more right and wrong. And hopefully that we can get Congress to expedite passing laws and parameters about what the future of this thing should be.
Napster said they'll remove the identified users from its system. And finally, hackers may have a new tool to pull off distributed denial of service attacks. The source code was posted anonymously last week. It's known as MStream. And analysts say it seems to be a primitive cousin of the previously recognized tools such as Trino and Tribal Flood Network. Still ahead on cybercrime,
the employer is entitled to a reasonable rule that says, while you're on my time, you do my work.
So how far can your employer go to monitor your internet use? Find out the limitations of employee and employer rights in the workplace next. Hey, but don't go anywhere yet. Take a guess at this week's timeline. What year did the following events take place? Kevin Mitnick serves a year in jail for breaking into a computer network of digital equipment. PLO declares independence for the Palestinian state. And Tracy Chapman wins Best New Artist. Was it 1987, 1988, or 1989? The answer in just 2 minutes.
Back to this week's timeline. Kevin Mitnick served a year in jail for breaking into digital computer network. The PLO declared independence for the Palestinian state, and Tracy Chapman wins Best New Artist. Come on, you remember it. The year was 1988. All right, let's jump ahead to fall of 1999. In fact, the exact day was November 30th, 1999, a day nearly 24 New York Times employees will never forget. One by one, each worker was called into an office and informed they were fired for sending or forwarding offensive email that violated the New York Times standards. Hey, don't fool yourself. Your employer is watching. But just how far can he go? That issue has sparked a major debate over the politics of privacy.
Among the 28 million people now accessing the internet through their employers' computers, many are spending some of that time in the workplace attending to personal matters online. In response, some employers are purchasing software from companies like Webset and Elron designed to monitor those employees.
They don't want their employees exposed to certain objectionable material. So the number one reason why they buy is to reduce their legal liability.
Employers are also concerned about their own computer networks, which can slow down with too many people on the web. Rebecca Spear is an attorney specializing in preventative employment practices.
Many employers are struggling with how to incorporate this relatively new technology into the workplace in a way that enhances productivity and even an employee's enjoyment of work without creating a set of countervailing problems.
And employers are within their legal rights to electronically monitor use of their own computers, according to Ann Brick of the American Civil Liberties Union.
The employer is entitled to a reasonable rule that says, while you're on my time, you do my work. The issue isn't the content, it's the use of the employee's time.
So, just how does an employee protect his or her online privacy in the workplace?
I think an employee has a duty to use common sense, and I think we're all adults. I think we're very used to the idea of treating our workplace and those around us with a great deal of respect. So that would indicate that employees should be careful not to use email excessively in a way that simply cuts into company time. and that they not use either email or the internet inappropriately to offend other people, to pass around jokes that might be offensive, to download material that somebody might walk past and be offended by.
But according to Alex Fowler of the Electronic Frontier Foundation, there are also steps employers can take to help avoid any problems.
I can't re-emphasize enough the importance of really having an open policy and being very clear and upfront about what those policies are, why they're there, and really getting some feedback from employees.
And Fowler emphasizes that both employers and employees should be involved in that process.
For the employee, it's understanding exactly what is expected of them, what the best practices are for their particular work environment, and exactly working together as a team and understanding what those rules are and having some kind of input in how they're enforced.
We want a policy that is good for employees and one that's good for employers. And basically that kind of policy would have two key elements. One, tell employees when they're being monitored. And two, don't snoop into the employee's personal communications.
But what about the cases where employers suspect serious misuse, such as download pornography or online gambling?
If you've got clear rules about what's okay and what's not, then the outcome would be the same as in any other instance in which an employee is found to break the rules. If employees know they're being monitored, they're less likely to break the rules. They're less likely to feel spied upon or taken advantage of.
Just having a policy may be all an employer needs to avoid trouble.
Okay, so let's go back to this New York Times case, because not only were 23 people fired, but I understand that 20 were also reprimanded, but all they did was actually receive this.
I know. All they did was receive it. Two other cases that come to mind. 7 First Union employees fired. That was in August. And then 19 from the brokerage Edward Jones also fired because of off-color jokes, forwarding it, misusing email in some form. Bloomberg, they won't even let email go through if it has an explicative.
So it's pretty straightforward. If you get mail like this, you certainly don't want to pass it on, and you really want to familiarize yourself with the policy at your particular company so that you know what they're expecting of you.
Right. Know the policy. Personal use, that's accepted. They have personal use all the time, but that doesn't mean they're not monitoring you. In fact, here are some stats from a recent study put out by Surfwatch. Now, that's a company that specializes in manufacturing software to monitor employee internet use. Here's what you do at work, what you spend your time on. In the first quarter of 1999, the most popular subject in descending order: general news, then investment, then sexually explicit material, travel, and then entertainment. But I should note that the sexually explicit material decreased from 98 to 99 by 50%. So things are...
Yes, that's good news.
Yeah, that's excellent news. How would you react if you found out that your employer was monitoring your internet use? We'd like to get your opinion in our weekly poll. Perhaps you agree with the law, and you feel it's within the company's right. That's A. Select B if you think monitoring internet use while at work is an invasion of privacy. Pick C if you think the company should trust their employees and use the honor system for personal net use. Or finally, maybe you would be so outraged to learn that your employer is monitoring your use, you just quit your job. And that is D. Give us your feedback. Go to cybercrime.com and please post your opinion on our new bulletin board. Still ahead on cybercrime.
Over the last 2 years, the President and the White House have been devoting a significant amount of focus and attention on combating the growing threat of cyber terrorism.
But is it paying off? Jeff Hunker from the National Security Council gives his take in this week's Chaos Theory. Welcome back. So we're busy assembling C3. That's what we're calling the Cybercrime Connection. And basically, it's a virtual panel of experts at your disposal to answer your cybercrime questions. Keep the panelist suggestions coming. We're working on getting them on the NetCam network. But there's no reason we can't get started right away. Recently, we got these questions from William Jones. He writes, when can the government use programs to intercept your transmissions over the net? When does it become an invasion of privacy? Well, who better to answer that than Kevin Poulsen's former defense attorney, Jennifer Granick? She is a C3 member. Anthony, here are her thoughts on the subject.
The answer to this question is complicated. For example, it can depend upon whether the information is stored or in transit. But in general, the government can only intercept your transmissions with a warrant. To get a warrant, the government must show that there's probable cause and that there's no less intrusive way for them to get the information they're seeking. They can only get a warrant for certain types of crimes.
Thank you, Jennifer. Okay, you know the drill. Go to cybercrime.com, take a look at the pending panel, post your suggestions, and keep the questions coming. Remember, if we use it on the air, a cybercrime hat is yours. It's gorgeous, isn't it? Anthony, thanks for your question. Your hat is in the mail. Okay, finally, it's here. It's time for Chaos Theory. This week, we hear from Jeff Hunker, the former director of the government's Critical Infrastructure Assurance Office. Now, Hunker is now with the National Security Council, and he says, even though you may be tired of hearing about those denial of service attacks, the net community better wake up to net security because we have a ways to go. Then again, that's just his chaos theory.
Over the last 2 years, the President and the White House have been devoting a significant amount of focus and attention on combating the growing threat of cyber terrorism. One of the questions that is frequently raised is whether this threat is real or whether it's something that the national security establishment is just manufacturing. It is a real threat. Not because we've seen some real incidents that have risen to the level of being national security threats. Even the recent distributed denial of service attacks were, at their essence, just economic nuisances. Our concern is really stemming from our knowledge that there are hostile nation states that are investing in offensive cyber attack capabilities. We're very concerned that similar capabilities are being developed by organized crime and terrorist groups, hence the need for a proactive strategy.
Well, that about does it for another episode of CyberCrime. Thanks for joining us.
Tune in next week. Here's one of the stories that we're working on.
When I found out that I was a victim of identity theft, I went into what you call post-traumatic stress disorder.
A move from corporate identity theft to personal identity theft. Next week, a closer look at one woman's story and the details you need to stay safe. And by the way, your suggestions have been very helpful. If you've got story ideas, TV panelist suggestions, questions, email us at cybercrime@zdtv.com. Drop by the website or chat with us on Mondays between 8 and 9 p.m.
And remember, if you missed anything or want more information about something that we cover on the show, the address is cybercrime.com. See you next time.